For 4,500 years, it's been sitting there in the desert, a literal mountain of stone, built entirely by human hands. The Great Pyramid of Giza is without a doubt one of history's most incredible wonders, but it's also one of its biggest mysteries. So how in the world did they actually build it? Well, let's dig in and find out.
To really get a sense of the scale here, just look at this. The Great Pyramid weighs an estimated 6 million tons. To put that in perspective, that's 12 times heavier than the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world today. I mean, that is just an almost unimaginable amount of rock.
And that brings us to the real head-scratcher. They didn't have steel cranes. They didn't have powerful bulldozers. For the most part, they didn't even use the wheel for hauling things around. So, how did they pull off what is still one of the greatest engineering feats in human history?
All right, to find the answer, we have to rewind the clock, way back. Picture this, we're on the Giza Plateau. It's around 2560 BC. The pharaoh, a guy named Khufu, decides he wants a tomb, but not just any tomb. He commissions a project that will define his legacy and honestly mystify the entire world for thousands of years to come.
Now, the Great Pyramid is definitely the star of the show, but it's not alone out there. It's on the west bank of the Nile in this huge city of the dead. There are actually three main pyramids, for Khufu, his son Khafre, and his grandson Menkaure. And Khufu's pyramid was so mind-bogglingly huge, it stayed the tallest man-made structure on Earth for over 3,500 years. Just think about that.
So, before we can even get to the how, we really need to understand the why. I mean, why go to all this unbelievable trouble? The answer, it turns out, is rooted in this really deep, powerful belief that shaped their entire world. You see, for the ancient Egyptians, death wasn't really the end. It was just a transition. They believed your soul went on this journey to the underworld to be judged by the gods, and if you were found worthy, you got to live forever. The pyramids, they are meant to be eternal homes for the pharaohs, these indestructible palaces for their afterlife, completely stocked with everything they need for eternity, like food, treasures, you name it.
Now, you might be wondering, okay, but how do we know this? Especially since the Great Pyramid was found pretty much empty. Well, the evidence comes from these amazing texts found in other tombs that describe these exact beliefs. Plus, there's the simple fact that for centuries, this is what pyramids were used for. Those treasures, yeah, they were probably looted thousands of years ago.
Of course, with a mystery this huge, it's no surprise that it's attracted all sorts of myths and wild conspiracy theories over the centuries. So let's do a little detective work, shall we? Let's separate the facts from the fiction.
The oldest myth, and probably the one we all learned from movies, comes from the Greek historian Herodotus. Now, he was writing 2,000 years after the pyramid was built, and he's the one who really popularized the whole idea that it was built by this massive, brutalized slave workforce.
But modern archaeology tells a completely different story. The builders weren't slaves at all. They were a respected, well-paid workforce of skilled laborers. Archaeologists have found their living quarters, they found evidence that they were fed really well, and they even found graffiti that shows they took a lot of pride in their work. They saw it as a kind of national project to honor their god-king.
Okay, so let's jump to a more modern theory. One you've probably scrolled past online at some point. It's the idea that the Great Pyramid wasn't a tomb, but was actually some kind of ancient power plant designed to generate and transmit wireless electricity.
So, the proof for this theory often involves artwork like this, with people claiming it shows ancient light bulbs. But, and this is a big but, Egyptologists are very clear on this. This art isn't depicting technology. It's actually illustrating a creation story from Egyptian mythology that involves a lotus flower and a snake. No light bulbs here.
So, if it wasn't some kind of lost technology or aliens, what was the reality? Well, the answer isn't in some supernatural force, but in a toolkit of absolutely incredible human ingenuity. So let's break down how they actually did it.
The tools themselves were actually pretty simple, but they were super effective. For the softer limestone, they used copper saws and chisels. For the much harder granite, they basically pounded it with dolerite, a rock that's even tougher. They'd split these massive blocks by hammering in wooden wedges, soaking them with water, and letting the expanding wood crack the stone. Then, they'd move them with rafts and sledges, and finally lift them with ramps and levers. And one of their most brilliant techniques was just simple physics. A study back in 2014 confirmed this theory that was inspired by an ancient tomb painting. By pouring just the right amount of water on the sand in front of a sledge, the Egyptians could cut the friction in half. That made it dramatically easier for crews to haul these unbelievably heavy stones across the desert. How clever is that?
Okay, but how did they get those stones hundreds of feet into the air? Well, the leading theory is a massive system of ramps, maybe even ones that spiraled around the pyramid itself, with wooden pillars and ropes used to haul the blocks up. Another idea is that they used a simpler lever system called a shadoof. It was a tool they already used for irrigation to lift and place the stones one level at a time.
So these theories are brilliant, right? They're well supported by evidence. But they all run smack into one gigantic problem. And this is where our investigation takes a really interesting twist. It all comes down to the timeline.
Let's just try to process these numbers for a second. The Great Pyramid is made of an estimated 2.3 million individual stone blocks. And these aren't pebbles. They weigh anywhere from 2.5 to 80 tons each.
And here's the kicker. Historians pretty much all agree that the entire project was finished in just 20 years, all during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu.
So if you do the math, to build this thing in just 20 years, the workers would have had to quarry, cut, transport, and perfectly place one of these enormous stone blocks roughly every 3 minutes. And that's working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 decades straight.
And this just brings us right back to the heart of the mystery. How is that even possible? I mean, even with our best theories about ramps and levers and wet sand, that rate of work seems almost superhuman. It's the speed and the efficiency that continues to just baffle everyone.
But the builders' genius wasn't just in their speed. It was also in their absolutely stunning precision. So let's look at one last piece of evidence that shows just how incredibly advanced their knowledge really was.
Get this. Without a compass, without GPS, the Egyptians aligned the Great Pyramid to the 4 cardinal directions, north, east, south, and west, with an error of just 1/15 of a degree. That is more precise than many modern buildings. The leading theory is they did it by tracking shadows during the autumn equinox, a method that is as simple as it is pure genius.
So in the end, the Great Pyramid is so much more than just a tomb. It's this incredible testament to human ingenuity and to the power of a shared goal. And it leaves us with this final really tantalizing question. If this is what we accomplished 4,500 years ago, with little more than ropes, stone, and an unshakable vision, what else are we truly capable of?